Wow, I dented that. There are times when reading a service manual before you jump in with both feet comes in handy. Hello everyone, welcome back to Maverick Mods. Back on the Firebird this week, still doing the interior. And I hate to say it's not quite done yet. Was really hoping to have it done, completed, so I could move on by this video. Just didn't happen. As I said in my earlier interior video, whenever that was, interior is not my favorite thing. When you work with metal, when you work with wood, things tend to be precise. When you work with interiors, the best way to describe them is, well, they're squishy. And again, that's one of the reasons just not my favorite thing to do. Got to do it though, got to work my way through it and get it done. I have to fight my desire to rush through it just to get it done because I want it to look good, I want it to look right, and sometimes you just got to take your time. And so that's where I'm at. This week, concentrating on getting the rear seats. Well, wait, I finished those last week, but package shelf. Seat belts, kind of an important thing. Spend some time on that today. Headliner. It's got to go in sometime. Now's as good a time as any. That's kind of the focus this week. So, grab your popcorn. Let's get started. As I was putting this week's video together, I kept thinking, should I separate this out in kind of like individual tasks and make chapters for each one, or do it chronologically? And the reason that became an issue is because everything I did this week, everything kind of tied together. I had to do part of one thing in order to continue with another thing and then do a third thing in order to finish the first thing. So rather than do like, okay, here's how you install a headliner, or here's how you install seat belts, this is going to be chronological, more or less, as the project progressed throughout these last few weeks. I'm sure a couple of you eagle-eyed viewers over the last weeks, months, maybe the last year, noticed that the speaker openings in the original package shelf here were, well, okay, they were mangled. No, let's be honest, they were butchered. And I didn't address that. Well, in reality, I didn't address it because I kind of forgot about it. And, you know, things happened. Well, I can't forget about it any longer. So before I painted the package shelf, I went through countless ways in my mind about how to fix that. And short of actually replacing the package shelf itself, they were so mangled and so butchered, that was the only viable option that way. But it only solved half the problem, because those speaker openings don't fit modern speakers very well. So that even a new package shelf would require modification. So I said, okay, let's think of a simple way to deal with this. Simple way was, you know, I'm going to cut all of the mangled, butchered part out and replace that. But is it really worth it to stitch weld new parts and pieces in? Because, well, here's my solution. I made a couple of plates that can just bolt in. They fit 6x9s, so let's see if I can do this without the magnet sticking to it. There we go. So my plates fit 6x9s just fine. This is going to be covered by the package shelf cover itself, so all of this will be underneath. But my thought was, keep in mind, I'm not an audiophile. I like music, but, you know, I mean, everybody's got their own tastes, and someday somebody might want a different sound system than what is going to be in this car. By having these plates separate and removable,
it opens up possibilities for somebody else to upgrade the stereo system someday. So let me get these plates, there's that one and there's that one. Let me get these plates cleaned up, painted, and get everything installed. And let's just take a look at what sort of the final product is going to look like. So here's my plates. Got them cleaned up, painted. They're screwed in with self-tappers. Everything is going to be covered by the package shelf except for the speakers sticking out. So we're good there. And it's basically just real simple. Just drop the speaker in, screw it in. With the side panels done, seat installed, I need to turn my attention to the package shelf. I did save the old one, and it's completely unusable, except that it fits, strangely enough. Very little on the interior of this car fit very well, but this one does. So I can use it as a pattern. Let me get it off of here, we'll get it over to the new material, and let's cut a new package shelf. So the material I'm using for the package tray or package shelf, essentially it's kind of the same stuff. This is Firebird, again, Lowe's or Home Depot, that's where it came from. So like I said, I'm going to use this as a pattern. The very back edge along here actually slides underneath the rear, I don't know what it'd be called, that little thingy on the back of the Firebird there. So this slides underneath. The thickness of these two boards are the same. Once I get the new piece cut, then I'm just going to cover the whole thing with the leather fabric. I'll have to, before I do that, I'll pattern this out and get it on, trimmed, and fit before I cut the speaker holes and the interface at the rear seat. I'm kind of concurrently working both on the package shelf and on the sail panels, and the reason I'm doing them together is there's an interface down at the lower edge. I want to make sure that I get the interface right between the sail panels and the package shelf. I know the only person that's ever going to see that is me, but you know what, I'm going to see it. So I went ahead and did some sanding on this sail panel. These things are thin and flimsy, and I mean the I guess it'd be the dye or the paint, whatever was on here. Some of it came off really easy, some of it didn't, and in the end, all the texture, or most of the texture that's on these panels, it's gone. This one came from a different car. It's a little sturdier, which is kind of good, but this one was probably one of the originals with the saddle interior. This one obviously came from a brown interior car and somebody painted it saddle. So all of this paint's got to come off because it's really gross looking. And in the end, because I've lost the texture on these, there's no real way to repaint that and regain the texture. So I'm just going to cover these with the fabric and give that a try and see how it works. Got the first of my sail panels covered up. This one turned out pretty good. I'm actually pretty happy with that. Got a corner here too I'll just have to touch up with a little bit of paint, but there's a couple of areas like right in this little notch here that you can't fold the material over because there's just not enough space in here, because this has to slide over the side panel. So let's go over and try and put this in, see if I can get this in. So this is actually a test fit. This will have to come out one more time because it interfaces with the package shelf back there. Now I'm doing this so I can make sure that the interface with the package shelf is gonna actually work right, because all of that was apart when we got the car. So I'm not flying blind here, but I am kind of guessing. There's tabs on the bottom of the sail panel that slot into the side panel itself. So we got to make sure we get those in, or at least started, and then it fits under there. And all of these, make sure that they're started in. I'll have to kind of hammer it down a little bit. Then it comes up and clips there, and then kind of slides back. There we go. All right, so we popped out there, but that's all right. I can pop it back in. There we go. And come back here, make sure this last one is in, which can't really tell if it is or not. No, it's not. There it is. Just make sure we're all free there. Okay, so that's down, that's down, that's down. All right, so I can come back a little bit more. Like so. And then it should line up with the hole here. And I don't know if it's going to line up with the hole there. If it doesn't, I'm going to make one. So the sail panel is in. And it fits pretty good. Of course, up here, the headliner is going to come down and slot underneath there. Got a good interface. It's a little loose right there because that tab back there is a little bit loose, but I think I can work with that. And what I was really concerned about back here is, like I said, this right here is the interface with the sail panel. And it looks like I think I've got it pretty well. So I think I can call this one done, other than just a little bit of cleanup on the edge right there. I've got one more sail panel to do, and then I can get back to the package shelf. I'm well on the way to getting the package shelf done. That's, well, it kind of takes a little time to do, but it's kind of a no-brainer. Before I permanently install the package shelf, though, I do have to think about seat belts. And you'd say, what do seat belts have to do with a package shelf? The original Firebird in the back seat just had lap belts. Unfortunately, we didn't get any, so we don't have the original belts that came with the Firebird. Rather than go to the expense of buying basically replacement belts just for the back seat, because I'm going to reuse the Z28 belts from the donor car for the front seats, I got to thinking, I've got the back seat belts for the Z28 donor car as well. The only difference is that instead of just being a lap belt, they actually have a shoulder harness. Why not? So I do have an issue though. So the front seat belt retractor cartridge, I guess you could call it, actually has a cover, and so it's designed to be out in the open. The rear seat belt cartridge was hidden behind the Z28's rear side panel, so it doesn't have any kind of a cover. And I've been looking for quite a while to try and figure out how to incorporate this belt and be able to use the shoulder harness for the rear seat belts. And everything I run across, I always run into one problem, and I'll show you what that problem is. So here's the cartridge. If I hold the cartridge like this, it locks, and you can never get it past that point right there. If I hold the cartridge like this, same problem. And it doesn't matter what orientation the cartridge is in, it always hits that lock, unless you hold it just like this. There you go. So this cartridge, I mean, obviously was designed to sit in this particular orientation, and it has to do with, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the inside of a belt cartridge, and it's kind of hard to see, but there's actually a weight back here on a little spring-loaded lever. And so when you pull, as the belt retracts, it spring loads down and hits the latches, unless that weight holds it up like that. Okay? And so if you have any other orientation, that weight is going to lock it. So the cartridge has to sit in this orientation, otherwise it's not going to work. Since the orientation of the belts is critical, well, it is, there's nothing I can do about it. The problem I ran across trying to figure out how to incorporate this harness is it has to sit in this orientation. And thankfully, I'm not sure why it's here, but there's actually a little pad on the metal package shelf back here that I can bolt the retractor reel to. But the question is how? I tried to come up with some options to make this as unobtrusive as possible. And the only viable option to make it unobtrusive, I can't put it in the side panel because there's no structure there to allow for that. and the angles don't work because your shoulder winds up, you know, somewhere around here, and I can't put it here and get it to work on the angles just don't work. So the retractor's got to be back here somewhere. So my first thought was, what if I put it over here? And you can see this is the little pad that's kind of built into the metal back here. But if I mount it down here, it still has to be in this orientation. But I could mount it down here somewhere, and then I've got a problem. I've got to exit the belt somewhere in this area, and I still have the same problem of the angle of the belt coming out. And then I thought, you know, sometimes keep it simple, KISS. You know, the best thing to do, I can mount it right here and basically build a standoff and bolt it right to this portion right here. Build a standoff. The belt will come out right there at the right angle, and all I've got to do with this right here, or for that matter, almost put it right back here. Either way, in this position, all I've got to do is create a cover that just covers the retractor rail. And now we have shoulder harnesses for the rear seats. Good news is I don't have to make any cuts. If I'd have put it underneath, I would have to make probably a slot in here. I'd have to do all kinds of modifications just to make that work, and I still don't think it would work. So I think that's the best solution, is to put it here. For now, though, I can put the package shelf in and continue on. Okay, so I've got the package shelf done. Went ahead and put a, this is the Fiberboard. I went ahead and put a little bit of, it's kind of a rubberized mat underneath just to help from vibration. Got speaker cutouts done. I'm gonna go ahead and get it in place. Now when it goes in here, it should, if everything is right, slide underneath here, which it did. Kind of slot in there, and I can use my speaker holes to help line everything up. Yeah. Looks pretty good, feels pretty good. I think that's there. I'm going to go ahead and drop the speakers in for test fit purposes. Now let's see if they'll bolt down. All right, there we go. Package shelf is in. I don't think I need to do any additional reinforcements on that. I think that'll stay pretty much just like that. Should be okay. And next up, I'll work on mounting the seat belt retractors, and they'll go right back here in this corner. I spared you guys the disassembly and reassembly of the rear seat, or rear seat area that I needed to finish the seat belt installation. So just about there. I still need to mount the retractor rails up top, but I needed to, frantic search to try and find the buckles again, because with the Firebird we never got any seat belts. Well, I take that back, we did, but they were well, the mice had gotten to them, and who knows what else had gotten to them. But there was no hardware with them. They were separate, and they weren't complete. So needless to say. But after finding all the hardware and all the belts and all the buckles and everything from the Z28, turns out that even though I didn't get any with the Firebird, the GM never changed the bolt thread pitch to metric, thankfully. So all of the seatbelt bolts from the Z28 fit right in to the existing holes on the Firebird. So I'm just about to the point here where I can mount up the bottom. Let's see, it goes that way. Yes, it does. The bottom of the buckle, or whatever this thing called, the bottom of the belt. I don't know what this little tab is called. I forget. Tab? It's good enough. And all it takes is just... Alright, so the buckle's installed. The belt is installed. I need to get the seat base in, which can be kind of frustrating sometimes because these things, I've got them kind of set up where a little hard to get in. Let me get the seat base in, then we'll work on the retractor reels themselves. You know, there are times when, wow, I dented that. There are times when reading a service manual before you jump in with both feet comes in handy. Turns out I was trying to put the front seat belts in the rear, and I didn't discover that until I tried to mount these in the front and figured out I didn't have the belt. So back up everything I just did, disregard that. This is actually the seat, the rear seat belt retractor reel. Come on. Get it oriented right so I can get a belt out here. So I remounted the belt on the floor, and this is where it's going to mount, and this is what it's going to look like. All I have to do now is just pop a bolt through, grab a nut, there we go. All right, once again, rear seat belts complete. All right, let's test out the seat belt. Hey, we got shoulder harnesses for the rear seats. So we're back inside the Firebird, and let's take a look at what it takes to put a retractor reel in a spot that was never designed to have one. And there is literally no other place to put it that I can find anyway. But the factory provides, now remember, this is a replacement roof, but it's still a factory replacement roof. So they provide two holes here. These are 5/16 reinforced. And what this did was, there was a bracket that came along here that essentially you stuffed a shoulder belt up in this bracket. When you wanted a shoulder harness, then you pulled it out and then you latched it down on your buckle, and then to get rid of it, you unlatched it and then you folded it back up and stuffed it in here. So my initial thought was, with my retractor reel, come on, there we go. Okay, so I'm thinking, okay, how can I make this work? I could, ideally, it kind of needs to go out here just a little bit. The farther I move it in, the more I have a conflict with the belt location on the seat. So it needs to be outboard as much as it can. If I put it here, I could put it there. Problem is, now I've got, I mean, that's really, really in the way. And that's just the best way to put it. Anybody in the back seat, anybody in the front seat, your head might hit that. So, and there's no other place to put it because there's not enough space between the inner roof skin and the outer roof skin to do any kind of a bracket or anything like that. And plus this also moves this inboard too much. So what I came up with is this. So I made myself a bracket, cut some holes in it. This bracket is going to bolt to the original locations where the old shoulder harness strap would bolt to. So let me get this bolted up and then we'll go to the next step of the reel itself. So there the bracket's bolted in place, and I've got a couple of, right now they're just bolts or studs mounted on there. I will weld the bolts in so they'll be permanent, and then my retractor reel just fits right up in there. Let me see if I can get a couple of nuts in here. Let me get the other side. This is just to hold it in place so we can test it out. I also figured out how to adjust the little weight in there so that it can actually sit at the proper angle without locking up every time you try to open it. All right, so that's in. Let's test it out. All right, let's check it out. It does, it's a little stiff. I think I could probably fix that by angling it. It does fit properly. It's where it needs to be. I think if I just angle that retractor just a little bit, that'll help, because it looks like what it's doing is just kind of pulling out sideways from the retractor itself. So what I did is I just re-drilled one of the holes to angle the retractor this way a little bit. Let's try it out. Much better. So let me get, I've got to weld the bolts onto the brackets, run the brackets through the sandblast cabinet, clean them up, paint them, and they'll be ready for permanent installation. All right, let's check the passenger seat. Here we go. All right, seat belts. All hung up. There we go. Seems to work. Feels good. Location's good. All right. I'm going to call the seat belts done. Now, the seat's got to come back out. Seat belts have to be disconnected from the floor itself, because now I've got to work on the headliner. The original headliner was one of those, you know, thingies with the bows and the you know, the crossway bows thing. Don't like that. The later versions had a molded felt type headliner like more modern cars have. And you can buy those reproduction. Problem is they don't make them in the molded pressed cardboard, fiberboard type material anymore. It's all ABS plastic or PVC plastic, whatever it is. Here's my theory on that. This headliner right here, as an example, is kind of a fiber, cardboard, I don't know what you'd call it, cellulose. It's some kind of molded, well, it's paper basically, sort of like cardboard. The replacement headliners are essentially plastic, and the one thing the headliner is going to do, obviously, is keep the headliner in shape, the cloth or whatever you call it. But the other thing it's going to do is hopefully reflect a little bit of heat, or at least not absorb heat just from the sun. And my theory on the plastic is that the plastic is going to retain heat, whereas this is not as much. That may be a theory, but I'm going with it. Nobody repops the original molded headliners for these cars anymore. So what do? Other than getting the plastic one? You got to get a little inventive. So we went junkyard crawling, and here's what we found. This is a headliner. It's a little dark. I'm not too thrilled about that, but this is a headliner out of a, I think it's a 93 or 94 Lincoln Town Car. The reason we got that, it's oversized and it doesn't have all kinds of weird molded in shapes halfway down the headliner that we have to deal with. So basically it's, for all intents and purposes, smooth all the way across, and it's bigger, so I can trim it down to size. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing sized and get some preliminary cuts so that maybe I can start putting this in. First thing I'm going to need to do is kind of center this up. I'm laying on top of the roof right now because, well, I'd say it's a good place to put it. You know, I mean, rather than try and do this underneath, I've got all of the trim pieces on the front and the back to hold the headliner in already in place. So that gives me, you know, kind of a guide as to where I stop cutting before I get to that point.
All right, that's pretty close. So what I'm going to do is get out my Sharpie, kind of eyeball the front edge. Okay, I'm going to trim this off. And while I'm at it, I can trim the sides here just a little bit. Kind of trimming the back way long to start with. All right, let me cut this and we'll do a test fit. First trim is done. Now comes the interesting part. Let's see if I can get this headliner in by myself and be able to hold it up in place. That's going to be an interesting thing, and I don't quite know how I'm going to do it yet. Well, the good news is I didn't cut it too small. Got quite a ways to go to trim it yet. All right, so we're in the final fitment, how we want to call it that, of the headliner, and I've got to make it kind of go around the retractors for the seat belt. In order to do that, I need to kind of start off by trimming. I've already done it on the driver's side. I'm going to start off by trimming the passenger side here and just make a hole. Now, what I want this to do is I want the headliner to go up against the roof, but I also want to leave just the right size hole for the retractors themselves. But since they're at an angle, it makes it a little bit tougher. So I'm going to kind of inch towards it and just cut out a little bit at a time. So the first step is to be able to get the buckles through, and then I can start inching the headliner up, if that makes any sense. I'm making a lot of debris. I'm really going to have to put the vacuum to use when I'm done with this. So here, got the buckle through. All right, so next, now this isn't going to get me all the way up because it's only going to get me up to the retractors. But to give you an idea, now at least I can see the retractors and I can start trimming, and I can prop this part up here and I can start trimming so that eventually it'll just kind of fall up in there. All right guys, we are inside the car again. We're looking at the headliner now. I know can't be able to see it all here. I got the area around this retractor reel cut out so that it protrudes through the headliner. I will fabricate a probably a little cover out of fiberglass to cover that when it's all said and done, once I get the headliner for completely installed. I do have to do a little bit of trimming yet, and basically the consequence of cutting down the headliner from other cars, it's awfully thick right here. I'm going to need to just kind of trim that back so it angles and feathers back into the back edge of the window here. Otherwise, there's the other retractor reel. Same thing on that side. The sides aren't bad, but I need to get the trim piece up in there and see how that fits in. The last major thing I need to do before I can pull this headliner down and actually put the fabric on it is right up in here. I've got holes for my sun visors. I need to locate those, create those holes, and that way I don't have to tear up the new fabric. I'll already know where the holes are. And that's pretty much it. I will have to do a little trimming on the front edge, but not much, to get all that to fit. The rest of it's going to tuck underneath A-pillar covers. There's a trim piece that comes up here. It'll tuck under the sail panels there, and there's a trim piece in the rear. And the rest of it is just going to be open. I may come up with some way to kind of help support it in the center. Not sure about that yet. And the nice thing about this headliner is I did keep, it's kind of hard to see it right now, but I did keep the indentations for the sun visors on the other car, and the Z28 sun visors fit perfectly in here.
So let me get the sun visor mounting done. We'll get this headliner out, get the rest of the fabric off, and start prepping this for the new fabric. Sun visors are in. They fit good. And they even fit in these little pockets here, which I was really pleased to see. Getting the sun visors themselves, the hole is pretty easy to, the big hole for the spring up in there is pretty easy to find. I just took a hole saw by hand and just punched through there when I found the right spot. The hard part is figuring out where the 3 screws for the sun visor screw into. And that was basically just kind of punch and pray until I found the right spot. So that took the longest time. At any rate, headliner is ready to come back out for its final covering. So let's do that. For those of you guys who just need to replace the fabric on your headliner, don't do what I'm about to do. I'm doing some major like refabricating. If you've got an old saggy headliner, chances are it's just this piece right here. And this piece is basically just the fabric over some foam. And to replace that, a lot of times all you gotta do is like this, just peel it off. And it'll come off, sometimes easy, sometimes hard, but it'll leave you that foam underneath. Then all you gotta do is just, depending on the material you get, sometimes the material you get will have this foam, sometimes it won't. The material I got has this foam. Now I'm trying to do 2 things here. One, I've got to thin out sections of this headliner, and I'll show you where. Since this headliner came from a Lincoln Town Car, I chopped off probably 2 feet, almost 2 feet of the back of this thing, and it's real thick right here. I don't want it to be that thick, so I'm going to take my sander and I'm going to taper up to probably about right here and blend that so that I've got a very fine edge here, and that's where my trim piece is going to cover. Same thing, I don't need to really taper along the edges here, I just need to kind of smooth those out. And up here, I'm pretty good. But what I did want to do is I wanted to get rid of not only the fabric, but I wanted to get rid of this foam layer, which unfortunately means taking off kind of the first layer itself of this headliner. It's not going to hurt anything, it's not going to change the shape, it's just thinning the overall headliner, which is what I'm trying to achieve. So again, if you're just replacing your fabric, just take the fabric off, work with the foam. I'm going 1 step farther. And there you go. Now my next step is I'm going to get my sander out, and I'm actually going to smooth out this layer of foam right here and make it a little bit more accepting of the glue, and like I said, thin out the edges that I need. Sorry for the light here. I've had this headliner material kind of soak it in the sun just to give it a little bit of pliability. Let me close this door real quick. There we go. Now, hopefully you can see what I'm doing. We're gonna get the material on the headliner, and best way to do this, I've already laid it out. I forget what size this is. It's like 48 inches by whatever it is, I don't remember. And all I'm doing here, when you do this, if you do this, then all you want to make sure is you've got plenty of overlap. You can always cut a little excess material off. It's really hard to put not enough material back on.
So once you've got it laid out, you've got your edges set, everything's good, you know you've got enough overlap for the curves and everything up in here. What you'll want to do is take and fold it in half-ish. You don't have to be exact, but just fold it in half. Now I'm going to start off with some spray adhesive. And I'm going to do, maybe 2 or 3 inches at a time. Go all the way across. You want to get both the material and the foam okay, now don't worry about the edges for now. You just want to make sure you get the spray all the way to the edge. Now, once you get it sprayed on, walk away for a couple of minutes. Now pull it back and repeat the process for another couple of inches. Again, walk away for a few minutes, let the glue tack. I'm using 3M77. It seems to work pretty well. There's supposedly headliner adhesive material specifically for this. This works perfectly well for me. Plan on going through at least 2 cans of this though, for a headliner about this size. All right, with all the fabric glued down, you think, man, we're just about done. No, there's still a lot of work to be done. We got to flip it over. I've got holes to cut out here, here, sun visors, and courtesy light, and then we got to deal with the edges. So let me have to cut the holes out. That's the easy part. Then we'll work on the edges. Okay. I can't even watch myself mess around with this headliner any longer. There's just a lot more of kind of the same thing getting the fabric on. It's done, it's installed. Let's take a look at it. I am really getting tired of sitting inside this Firebird. As I said before, interior work, not really my thing. I have to really fight to not rush through this just to get it over with because I want to make it done. But here's the headliner. So rear trim piece in, sail panels are in, obviously. Retractor reels finished, headliner's done around the retractor reels. A little bit dirty right now, but I can fix that. Side trim pieces. The headliner, like I said, came from I think it was a 93 or 94 Lincoln Town Car. We just took the interior light from that too. Seems to work pretty good. Everything's wired up, set to go. Sun visors come from the Z28. So A-pillars painted, installed, or A-pillar trim painted, installed, side trim. Basically, headliner is done. I wish I could say that's the end of the interior, but it's the end of the interior for this episode. Next up, HVAC, wiring, and dash. That's going to do it for this week, guys. Still got a little bit of work left on the interior, but it's getting closer. And after that, I'm going to work on the doors, get the doors edged out, get those reinstalled. Then I can get the front end on and really start showing some serious progress. Certainly appreciate everybody watching. Thank you guys for tuning in every week. I really do appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, think about it. Just hit that subscribe button. Doesn't cost a thing. We'll see you guys next week. Everybody, have a great day.